Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill.
All right, Dennis, welcome back again. I think we can wrap it up on this one, but you've got such a great list in your book, and we really haven't given those enough time in our conversation. So I felt like episode 3 was in order. So you ready to go through the 52 items in your book and talk about your favorites? Maybe elaborate a little bit more?
Whichever ones you like. They're all interesting.
Sounds awesome. Well, let's just start with, it all starts with you. What does that mean, and why is that a part of one of your bullets?
You know, it's kind of the anchor principle for looking at your qualities as a person. These things I call soft skills, and trying to benefit from understanding them. And so the first thing, in order for you to be able to improve how you interact with your environment, your workplace, your family, your community, you need to understand things about yourself. And so it really does start with you. If you understand both what your strengths are, which are the positive qualities, and also what your weaknesses are, the opportunity there is to build a foundation that's going to help to contribute to pretty much every interaction you have with people can be better if you understand what they see and what they hear in you. And again, that's what it boils down to, because you could describe yourself in an honest way using a variety of words, and if you were to poll a few people that knew you really well and say, give me a list of 10 things, and 5 of them are qualities that you thought were really valuable, and ask them, pick 5 of these that you think are things that you see in me. I can almost guarantee you that they're going to pick several of the ones that you said were among your top ones, along with some other ones. Because again, if you've been in a relationship with a person for a while at work, where you see them every day, or in a lot of social settings, then they're going to have seen you and heard you over a period of time, and so they're going to have a view of what kind of person you are, and so it really does start with you.
Yeah, that's a great one. I think looking inward before you look outward is my takeaway from that.
Good way to say it. Yeah, better than the way I said it, actually. So maybe we should change it.
Yeah. Your next edition, go ahead and update that. What about the other thought? You talk about I am who I am, and there's not much I can do about it now, or maybe not. Right?
Yeah, the maybe not part's the important part. The one thing that people fail to understand is how they have developed over their lifetime. Is a day-to-day experience gained, things learned, witnessing things, feeling things, all that kind of stuff, and that's how you become who you are. At whatever point in your life that you want to take a snapshot and say, "Who am I? What do people see in me? What do people like about me? What are the things that cause me difficulty? What are the things I do really well?" Taking stock in yourself, which again starts with you. But the idea is that you may not like some things. But you say to yourself, I'm 50 years old. I'm not gonna, I'm just not gonna do it. I'm not gonna work on that because I just don't want to. And that's not a good idea, because particularly if it's something which you come to learn, if you've done the honest look at yourself, you've come to learn has been a drag factor on some of your relationships with other people, has caused difficulty in different circumstances. Then you've got no choice but to figure out what it is that I need to change about myself, and go about changing it. And again, most importantly, and I say this in a lot of different places, most importantly, this is not a self improvement project idea. This is about improving self, but you don't improve yourself by yourself. Again, that's not a mishmash of words, but it's a really important concept. Again, my generation. The idea that I'm going to engage a coach to help me improve myself so I can be more productive, effective, be a better leader in my organization. No, 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 no. I mean, I'm 50, 60 years old. Nobody's going to coach me. Well, that's exactly what they need, because again, it's hard. And again, this also has its roots in some other aspects of life. But it is hard to take a look at yourself honestly, and put words, put it on paper, but enunciate the words that describe things about yourself that you know are things that people have difficulty with. And that gives you the opportunity not to look directly in the mirror and say that these are things about myself that I don't like, but to look in the mirror and an exercise, which is an honest exercise, say these are things that I've gotten feedback about from people. That's one of the better if not best assessment frameworks are referred to as 360 assessments, where you're the subject of the assessment, and you get reports or feedback from people who you work for, people you work with, people that work for you, customers, and other people, and they all evaluate you, and then the results are compiled to give you a 360 snapshot of you. And so you hear the good things, you hear and see the bad things, and those bad things are very hard to take at times. But if your attitude is that this is important because I want to either continue to enjoy progress in my life's journey, or better yet, I want to improve my opportunity for greater success by having a positive impact on people as I progress up the ladder in an organization, then I need to work on these things. Even though I say I don't want to, I've got to change my mindset. My mindset has to be I can, not I won't.
Yeah, I think the phrase that keeps ringing in my ears is the mentality that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Like, I'm past my ability to learn, and that's just never the case, right?
Right, and that's one of my other thoughts later in my list.
Yeah, you also you mentioned, I found it interesting, you said a self-improvement project.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard that before. I probably use that phrase. But in my mind, when you said that, I thought, a project gets finished. A project gets completed. Then you move on and you do another project. And I feel like self-improvement is a continual process. It's not a project. It's something that we should always be working on. And it might be in one area or another, but the effort and the intent to progress should never be diminished.
Yes. Yeah, that's a fair thought, that projects have ends. This is an ongoing project. It may have what it can have and should have in order to make it a manageable activity. Is it should have time frames. So there should be a plan that says, here's how I'm going to go about working on these different things that I've identified that I need to improve upon. So it should have time frames. There should be some accountability. And that's why, you don't put the plan together and say, I'm going to execute it myself. I don't need any help. Somebody has to hold you accountable to it in a positive, constructive, supportive way. But you need somebody to do that. And then there are going to be milestones. You accomplish a series of steps. You have an opportunity where there's a milestone, and you can assess, where am I now, and just assess progress. And if progress has been good and you've gotten some additional feedback from people, including the person who's helping you with your process or project, then there's an opportunity to celebrate. So, you know what? Let's go have a soft drink together, because I didn't know if I was going to get here, but here I am, and I feel the difference. It's making a difference. It's a good thing. I want to celebrate, and then I want to move on and do some more stuff to improve myself.
I love that you're talking about getting that feedback. So feedback it means that they're actually looking for validation or maybe corrective behavior or a gap, maybe a shortcoming. And then if they're looking for that, then they should be open to it. And if they're open to it, then that means there's an opportunity for change, which means, I know it's one of your other bullets. I don't always have to be right. I don't have to know. There's more than one way to do these things. And the way I've been doing it may not necessarily be the right one for this situation.
Exactly. There's, again, having an open mind is an essential behavior for individuals who are interested in progressing taking on more responsibility in organizational structures, being a good to great leader. You have to be willing to listen. You have to be willing to say, this is, yes, I've done it this way for 25 years, but this 26-year-old, showed me a different way of doing this. And the old me would have said, thanks a lot, get back to work. But the new me said, tell me more. And again, there's absolutely, there's so much right about that. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with thinking that someone else, again, this is one of those things that makes leaders not great leaders. And that is that they don't listen, that they think, or they really believe that they're the smartest person in the room. And when they walk in the room, what they fail to notice is how much oxygen has been depleted in that space when they walk in. Again, so there are those kinds of leaders, and people. When I talk about leadership, when I talk about that phenomenon, they will kind of shake their head, say, you know what? Yeah, there's this one guy who's a division vice president, and now that you say it that way, when he comes into the room, everything changes, and not in a good way. So we're talking about human behavior, and a lot of people, some people have taken time to learn as much as they can about it. I try to learn stuff all the time, but I don't know much. I don't know enough. But again, there's one of my other thoughts is common sense is not that common, and that's one of those impediments. Again, to think that this is a good way to do this, and it makes sense, and someone say no, we're not doing it that way. There's a lot of that going around, and again, I have to toss a lot of. I should have done a generational identification of each of these thoughts as I put them together. That would have been an interesting. Maybe I'll go back and edit the book or something. But again, that's just one of those things. Again, all these ideas and these expressions all just speak to how we behave, and also suggest that there are different ways to behave, and all we have to do is have the willingness to acknowledge that some things can change and go about changing them.
Yeah, you've got one of your other points, and I've got a little more thought on this too. Hardworking is much more than just working hard. And you hear people say, I like to work smarter, not harder, and all of these things are situational. Like if you've got a pile of boulders to move, there's a smart way to approach that. Where do you start in the pile, and where are you putting them? Is it on a trailer or a truck, or where's that part? Are you moving it? There's some logistics there. But at the end of the day, there's 114 boulders to move. Like, there's just a lot of work to be done. So you could sit and analyze, until you're blue in the face. That's not going to move those rocks. So there's a place and a time when you just need to get stuff done. And then, there's another time when strategy maybe is the paramount priority. So I think, maybe expand on, your thought with hardworking is more than just working hard. What does that mean to you?
Well, it means that you understand that it's not you alone. We don't work in an industry where it's, that I may literally for a day, or maybe for days or weeks, literally work alone, but I'm part of something. I'm part of a natural working group. I'm part of a team. I'm part of, again, the vast majority of trades contractors, particularly when you get into the finishing trades, are small shops. Again, when they're in peak season, they may have 20 guys. In the wintertime, they have 4 or 5. So and they're very sensitive to the idea that we need to do everything we can to work well together. And again, and it's not to say that there are 5 or 10 different ways to do this. There may be the best way to do it, but that best way is typically not going to be just a pure back-breaking exercise. So there is a need to talk among the group of people and say, Joe, how do we do this? And Joe says, well, I would do this, this, and this, and then you're off to the races, because you're not a singular entity in the construction industry. In every place, you're part of something.
Yeah, see, and if you have your top 10 priorities in place, where you have integrity and honesty and you're trustworthy, and you have those leadership soft skills dialed in, and you're a great communicator and your team knows that, I think two things can happen. Number one, you're going to take the time to explain quickly why, although I know this isn't the only way, this is the reason we do it like this. And it's because of A, B, and C. And so this may not be as fast as this other thing. It's really important we do this because we've got to be mindful of these other things, because of something else or someone else down the line is going to be impacted. And so we have to approach this in a very specific manner. And here's why. Then your team they know why, they understand, they know that, you're not an idiot, you're not blind, you do know what's going on, but you have instead of, allowing the pushback to happen, having the argument, telling them to just shut up and do what they're told, or, managing it in that other way where you're out of integrity and you don't have that EQ, man, you can avoid a whole myriad of issues and disgruntledness and frustration and anger if you would take 15 or 20 seconds to just explain a little bit of the why while you're talking about the what.
Yeah, you should write a book. No, because you touched on I was just thinking about one word in my head while you were talking, and then you started saying it, and you said it several times, and you said why. That's one of the questions that my generation at times is impatient about answering that question for that millennial or that Gen Z. It's just they give the direction and that's the end of it. And if the person says, well, why are we doing it that way? Don't worry about that. No, just do it the way I said to do it. But if you just adapt and adopt the old phrasing, which fits and it can fit in a positive way, with the old phrasing is measure twice, cut once. So answer the question why. Make sure that there's take the time to make sure there's understanding, because in all likelihood, that's going to eliminate the possibility for, in the worst case scenario, a safety incident. In a more average scenario, just not getting done right. At the end of the day, the result is not the proper result. You can eliminate those things by taking a little, cutting twice. Don't cut once. Rather don't measure once, measure twice. So make sure they understand. Bob, explain to me in your own words how we're going to go about moving that pile of rocks. And so Bob is expected to be able to explain it. He may parrot back what you said to him, but at least it means that he listened to it. And oh, by the way, we haven't talked about this just as a general thought, but I'll throw it out there now because it's so friggin' important. The most important part of the process of communication, the one that people have the hardest time being good at, is listening. And particularly if you're certain personality styles or behavioral styles, listening is virtually impossible for you to do. It's important, but it's just the way your brain is wired. It just makes you nuts.
But the servant leader recognizes, and I've been guilty of it in my life as a parent, especially or as a boss. I know my father was really good at this one, but I told you, and the finger wagging, and it's like, actually, a servant leader who's in touch with him or herself recognizes the responsibility falls on them that the message is received and received properly. And so in sales, we always talk about tell, show, tell. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to show you what I told you, and then I'm going to tell you what I showed you. So there is a receipt, like in text or email, you get a read receipt. I have acknowledged that the message has been received. Now the question is, did they understand? Did I articulate it properly so that the message was conveyed appropriately, so that two people understand the same thing in the same manner? And man, you'll have success when you do that. And just to back up to something you said, and I said this as a builder, and I've said it my whole career here in our software company, I don't like measure twice, cut once. It's a waste of time. I measure once and I cut once. I have a method in which I measure appropriately, and it's math. It's the same every time. I just have to do it right the first time. And I think there's an opportunity that if we sharpen these soft skills, if we sharpen our approach, if we sharpen our method that we go about these things, man, we will save a lot of time taking extra measurements and potentially causing additional confusion. Wait, was it this? Was it this? Sometimes too much information is actually part of the problem. Too much follow-up can be part of the problem. And so effective communication means,
right. If you have clarity at the beginning, then you're not going to have confusion at the back end.
You never have to go back.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
The information didn't change.
Agree.
It had a hard landing or a crash landing instead of a soft landing. And that's what the definition of communication is you telling me doesn't mean it's now my responsibility. You might have dropped the baton as you were trying to hand it off. I never got it. I got to have it in my hand. And when I do that, I can take responsibility for that. But until it's there, that's your job,
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely.
One other thing, you had, one of your bullets that I really wanted to talk about, it says it's a large industry, right? Or it's a small industry, whatever it is, right? And no matter what industry, it's about relationships. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I've been part of and worked for companies in the industry that are a handful of people to hundreds of people. And when you think about, what's important to be successful in this generation, in the previous generations, and the future generations, the thing that's the most important is in business is to be able to build relationships with people over a long period of time, which takes a focused effort from the very beginning to the very end. The payoff is significant. If you're one of those contractors that has a pretty long roster of repeat customers, that means two things about your company. One, that you don't have to bid work all the time as a practical matter, because you're probably doing more negotiated work with those long-standing customers. And maybe three things. Second, that you're sustaining a reasonable level of profitability. Not maybe as much profitability if you did a bunch of one-off projects in 1 year that had some really good margins in them, but nonetheless profitability. And the third is you don't have to spend as much money on marketing, business development. You don't have to find new customers. You just take care of the ones that you have, so you can pick and choose the ones you want to do business with, rather than be forced to bid everything that comes out, gets tossed over the transom. That's a much better place to be than having to chase everything that's going on. And it just all it requires you to do is to build that relationship, have good mutual knowledge of yourself and the customer, and build on that so that they trust you. And if you do that, then it's those are the companies that get through the hard times. The ones that have customers that find a way even to the point. So, well, listen, why don't we have you got 6 guys in the that you think about laying off. You may be able to use them, but if you send them over, I'll have them do some stuff reorganizing our warehouse, and I'll just pay you straight wage for those guys. Just something to keep them busy.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It really leads into the last point I wanted to discuss, and one of your other bullet points. You talk about the only thing that you get to take with you to your grave is your reputation, and that's exactly what you're talking about there, right?
Absolutely. Again, that's because we really are. We're an industry. We're not different, but it seems it feels more like a very small community in construction. It's broken up into regions and cities and markets and segments and all that kind of stuff. But it's it is smallish in terms of the culture. And at the end of the day, the company's been around for a long time. When their owner, if it's a family-owned company, and we have a lot of them in construction, when those generations transition, again, they remember the dad, and they love the dad, they respected the dad. He was known for this, that, and the other thing, and so when he came to the end of his life, people remembered who he was as a person in the construction industry, and so he got to take that with him, but also probably left a nice measure of those same qualities with the people that came behind him.
Well, and that just goes back to the integrity and all the other things, that the trustworthiness and all the other points that you make, where you leave that lasting legacy. And I know as a general contractor, I was always looking for the best deal, the subs that would, be most reasonable, and this, that, and the other thing, getting started, because you're running on tighter margins, you're trying to get your footing. But at a certain point, I think the wise contractors learn to forge those relationships with subs they can trust, that fill out that list that you've got, that where they're trustworthy and they have integrity. I know they said they're going to be there, they will be there. If they're not, something really bad happened, and they're going to work twice as hard to make it up and make sure that it doesn't impact you or the other tradesmen down the line after that, because they value that relationship and that opportunity, because they don't want to have to bid new work either, just as much as you do. I don't want to have to go find a new plumber next week. I just want the guy I can trust.
People say that the industry has gotten more and more cutthroat as each generation has passed. I don't think that's necessarily true. It's the type and the types of competition have changed dramatically. But at the end of the day, if you've got a great relationship with a company, if you're the GC working for the owner, or if you're a trades contractor that works for the GCs, if you've got great relationships that are developed over a long period of time, they'll pay more for you. Now, it's not going to be like 10% premium, but they won't try to squeeze that last nickel or dime out of you, because you're not a stranger. You're someone that they know, someone that they trust, someone that delivers great quality work on time, on budget, and safely.
And if you are a joy, truly, that's a real thing. I've seen it. I've lived it. If you're a joy to be around, to work with, to collaborate with, even though you're the electrician and he's the plumber, and a lot of projects and some companies, those guys are at each other's throats, stepping on each other, tinner and the this and the that, and you're cutting out my stuff and I got to fish my wires around. If you're a joy to work with and around, when problems come and you solve them quickly and quietly, man, you're going to create opportunities for you that you won't be able to catch up to all the work. And then in the end, when you do charge more and the contractor's going to pay more, the contractor also can charge more, because his projects are done right, they're done safely, they're on time, they're on budget. That integrity is felt throughout the entire organization, and you're passing that well-constructed, well-built, properly, put together structure to your client. And they're going to have less maintenance issue. Just over the course of time, I think, those slivers that fester and become a big problem to lead to amputation aren't going to impact you. Well, another great conversation. I think we did a pretty good job over a few episodes encapsulating a lot of the goodness that you had to share from your books. I hope it's very appealing and something that the listeners want to check into. Why don't you just recap the name of your book and maybe where they can find it? And thanks for sharing all your wisdom.
Yeah, the title of my book and also of my podcast is Soft as Steel. You can get it on Amazon or just about any other online bookseller that you can find, and the podcasts are available on all the major platforms as well. And I'd be delighted to see my book being sold to people. But most importantly, at the end of the day, I didn't write the book for sales. I wrote the book because it was a way for me to convey my message, and so that's been my focus since that point in time. My last thought, if I could, is just a takeaway for folks. And I've talked throughout these episodes about, again, understanding yourself and be able to put words to both the good things and the things you can work on for yourself. I highly recommend that for any of your listeners, that they seek out there are a number of different kinds of assessment instruments that you can go online and take an assessment, or you can buy a booklet and take an assessment. There's one suite of assessments that are referred to as the DISC profile, and it gives you feedback on your personality type, gives you descriptive words, helps you better articulate who you are. And I describe that assessment along with another one on emotional intelligence as gathering some facts about yourself. And as long as you then and inevitably, and every time I've used these instruments, and I've been using them for 20 years in a class setting, there might be one person that wants to push back, say, I don't know if that really describes me. I said, well, did you show it to your spouse, your girlfriend, your significant other? Say, yeah. I said, what did they say? Well, they said it describes me perfectly. I said, who are you going to listen to? So again, it's gather, understand, learn about yourself, and use some of these instruments to help, kind of fill a folder, if you will, of facts about yourself that are actionable, that you can use in order to try to improve yourself.
That's beautiful. Love that. Thank you for that. Also additional insight, and of course, encourage listeners to check out the book and the podcast, Soft as Steel. And Dennis, it's been a pleasure having you on, and looking forward to catching up again down the road. We'll have to do this again.
We will. Absolutely. Thank you, Mike, for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us today on the Mobile Workforce Podcast, sponsored by About Time Technologies and WorkMax. If you liked the conversation we had today, or were able to learn anything new or helpful, please make sure to follow us on our WorkMax page on LinkedIn and on Instagram at WorkMax_. And subscribe to the show on iTunes or your preferred podcast platform so you will never miss another insightful episode. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review and share the show with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us and will allow us to continue providing impactful information with others looking to improve their results in their business and, in turn, their life.